Week 11 of the fantasy football season. Here's the top 15 tight ends I'm ranking this week. Number 1, Travis Kelce of the Kansas City Chiefs. So Travis Kelce back the number 1 target in the offense for this Kansas City Chiefs team this week. It's a matchup at the Buffalo Bills. Obviously a team they've had many big games and playoff games against. And this is going to be a high-scoring game, I believe, between these two teams. And Travis Kelce's got a great track record versus Buffalo. Number 2, George Kittle of the San Francisco 49ers. So I know he's banged up with a hamstring injury. We'll see if he plays in this game as George Kittle. And this week it's a great matchup versus Seattle Seahawks. So with Brandon Ayuk out for the season, Kittle, the usage is going to go up even more. So early in the season versus Seattle defense, he went out there, found the end zone. And George Kittle, he's been a matchup problem all season long for safeties, linebackers. And as long as he's healthy, he's a top 4 or 5 tight end, worst case, in Fantasy Football Weekly. Number 3, Brock Bowers of the Las Vegas Raiders. So Brock Bowers, he's taken the tight end position by storm. No one could cover him. And imagine he had a top-of-the-line quarterback. The numbers he would put up is Brock Bowers. So he's doing all this and amongst the league leaders at the tight end position with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. So this week, a pretty decent matchup at the Miami Dolphins. Their defense hasn't been all that great this season. I know last week on Monday night they went in there, had a good ball game at the Los Angeles Rams, but I think Brock Bowers is going to have his way versus Miami, and we've seen him all season long, no matter who it's been. Go out there and put up numbers. Number 4, TJ Hawkinson of the Minnesota Vikings. So Hawkinson quickly back into game shape and playing well, coming off an ACL and MCL injury where he got hurt late in the season last season. So now a couple games under his belt. Last week had a nice ball game, 15 fantasy points in PPR leagues is Hawkinson. And this week it's a pretty good matchup at the Tennessee Titans. So the number 2 target easily in this offense for the Minnesota Vikings. And with Justin Jefferson opening up that field and Hawkinson working the middle, he's going to be good as long as he stays healthy. Number 5, Mark Andrews of the Baltimore Ravens. So Mark Andrews, the last few weeks, he's definitely improved. After the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, he was a drop candidate for fantasy owners. But last week had a big ball game. Right now, I believe he's the number 2 option in the passing game behind, obviously, Zay Flowers for this Baltimore Raven team. So Mark Andrews, he's looking quicker, he's looking healthy. A bad leg injury last season towards the end of the season, and it just took a while for him to get his legs under him. But now him and Lamar back on the same page, and he's getting separation and finding the end zone. So this week, it's a matchup at the Pittsburgh Steelers, a division matchup for first place, a team he's familiar with, obviously playing twice a year. I think Mark Andrews goes out there once again, has a good game. Number 6, Sam Laporta of the Detroit Lions. So he's day-to-day now with the shoulder injury of Sam Laporta. But last week, he got off to a good start in that ball game, finding the end zone. He had over 60 yards, and then he left with the shoulder injury. So if he does play this week, it's a great matchup versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. We know their defense can't stop anyone. And Sam Laporta, he's a good route runner. I know this season it's definitely been a bust type of year for him, where he was the first or second tight end off the board in the late second, third round for most fantasy drafts. But the last couple weeks, he's starting to get things going. Him and Goff is starting to get the rapport back down. And this week, like I said, if he plays, it's a great matchup. And Laporta, once he's in that open field, one of the best yard after catch tight ends in the league as well. Number 7, David Njoku of the Cleveland Browns. So David Njoku, he's definitely benefited from Deshaun Watson getting hurt and out for the season, with Jameis Winston coming in at quarterback. And we know Winston is a gunslinger. He's going to drive that football down the field, and it doesn't matter. As long as you're open, Winston's getting you that football one way or the other. He's going to try to thread the needle. And this week at the New Orleans Saints, fast track indoors, we saw Kyle Pitts have a decent ball game last week. I think David Njoku is the number 2 target in this offense, could go out there and have a productive ball game for Cleveland and fantasy owners this week. Number 8, Mike Gesicki of the Cincinnati Bengals. I know Gesicki, it was a down game for him last week, where he only had 7 fantasy points. But this week, I think he bounces back is Gesicki. It was the Jamar Chase show, obviously, of Baltimore. When one player goes for over 230 yards and finds the end zone 3 times, it's obviously tough for anyone else to get production. But Gesicki, a big target. Him and Joe Burrow have a great rapport. And T. Higgins, I don't believe he's returning in this ball game, which obviously opens up more targets as well for Mike Gesicki. So this week on Sunday night, I think Gesicki goes out there once again, and he has a bounce-back performance. Number 9, Kyle Pitts of the Atlanta Falcons. So Kyle Pitts this week, it's not the greatest of matchups at the Denver Broncos, one of the better defenses in the league. But Kyle Pitts last week, it was a decent ball game. Him and Kirk Cousins have definitely been locked in the last month of the season, where we saw Kyle Pitts have a 2-touchdown game at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. going back decades. So I think this week at the Denver Broncos, he could go out there as Kyle Pitts. He could run the routes and make plays. And like I said, if Patrick Surtain's going to be on Drake London, that's going to take London out for the majority of the game, and things might open up in the middle for Pitts this week. Number 10, Evan Ingram of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So pretty much Ingram and ETN, the only two players at this point of the season with Mac Jones in there, quarterback, and all the struggles for this Jaguar team that you could trust in fantasy football. So this week they're going to be down early and often at the Detroit Lions, where I believe this Detroit team got off to an early 10-14 point lead, and they're going to have to play catch up and throw the football the majority of the game. Evan Ingram, he's a good route runner. He could line up on the outside, on the inside of the formation, and like I said, they're going to be trailing and have to throw the football, where he might work his way into production this week is Ingram. Number 11, Dallas Goedert of the Philadelphia Eagles. So Goedert returned to the lineup after missing 3 games with a hamstring injury at the Dallas Cowboys, and he found the end zone. And Dallas Goedert, he's still a good target in the red zone. He's a good yard after catch tight end. We saw it early in the season when both Smith and Brown were banged up. He went for 10 for 170 and a touchdown at the New Orleans Saints. And this week here, it's a potentially high-scoring game versus the Washington Commanders, where both teams are going to go up and down the field, I believe, in this ball game. And like I said, Dallas Goedert, he's a good tight end. He's got good hands, and he obviously knows the system well. And Jalen Hurts trusts him in big situations. So this week, I think he could go out there, have a decent performance. Number 12, Tucker Kraft of the Green Bay Packers. So Tucker Kraft, he's been solid for the majority of the season. He's obviously beaten out Luke Musgrave early in the year for the starting tight end job, and arguably he is the number 2 option in this passing game. Guys like Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, and Dontayvion Wicks, they've been inconsistent this season, I believe, where they'll have one good week, one bad week. This week, not the greatest of matchups with the Chicago Bears, but Tucker Kraft, yard after catch, he's one of the better tight ends at that. We saw it a few weeks ago in a ball game at Tennessee where he took a little pass and went 66 yards on the game for it. So this week at the Chicago Bears, in a grinded out type of matchup, NFC North rivals, I think Tucker Kraft could go out there and have a productive ball game. 13, Pat Freiermuth, Pittsburgh Steelers. So Pat Freiermuth, he found the end zone last week. Him and Russell Wilson, they're starting to get things going. I thought Freiermuth had a couple decent games early in the year with Justin Fields, but we know Russell Wilson, he likes targeting the tight end. It's always been a security blanket, and on big down position he can rely on throughout his NFL career. And this offense, they're just rolling right now. They're getting the football spread out. They're moving it around. And this week in a potential high-scoring game with division rival, the Baltimore Ravens, coming to town, I think Freiermuth could go out there, have a decent performance. 14, Hunter Henry of the New England Patriots. So maybe I'm lower on Henry than other people or whatever the case may be, but this offense is inconsistent week in and week out. I know Henry is the number 1 option on the offense for this New England Patriot team, where you got guys like Jalen Polk, Demario Douglas, Bote, Kendrick Bourne at the receiver position. Aren't really number 1 receivers, even number 2 receivers, arguably. But if this Patriot team, I don't think weekly you could count on Hunter Henry as a top 10 option. This tight end position's gotten better over the last few weeks, and these other guys have more upside, because pretty much, in my opinion, his ceiling for Hunter Henry's 10-13 fantasy points, which isn't a bad ceiling, but also the floor you saw last week. Like, if, let's say, they do get off to a lead, this New England Patriot team, they're going to try to run the football and play good defense, even though I don't see that being the case with this Ram offense coming to town. So Hunter Henry, like I said, his floor is pretty bad, and his ceiling isn't that high. So that's why this week I have him as 14, and the 15th and final tight end I'm ranking is Zach Ertz of the Washington Commanders. So Zach Ertz, he's a good route runner. He's still got a good IQ for the game. I know he's up there in age, and he definitely lost a step or two. But this week a matchup at one of his former teams, and a team he spent a lot of years of his career in, at the Philadelphia Eagles. So Zach Ertz, the number 2 option in the passing game for the Commanders. And he's had some decent games this season, but the thing with him as well, his ceiling isn't that high for Zach Ertz. Pretty much 10-12 fantasy points at most get out of Zach Ertz. But obviously, that's not that horrible at the tight end position. It's definitely serviceable in PPR leagues. So this week at Philadelphia, I think he's going to want to go out there and prove to his former team he's still got something left in the tank. And this Philadelphia Eagle team, their defense has been middle of the pack this season versus the tight end position. So that's the top 15 tight ends ranking for week 11 of the fantasy football season.